Karen was alone at home when she was maliciously robbed. The thieves were in and out in moments but took more than £2,000. By the time she realized, both they and her money were long gone. All she can remember was responding to an email from what she thought was her bank, asking her to confirm her security details. That was all the invitation the criminals needed.
You can't see cybercrime, but there are ways to avoid it. At Barclays, we'll never ask you to confirm your security details by email.
Let's talk to Helen Dell, writer, lawyer and political commentator. Helen, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. I'm full of the joys of spring. Very happy to be here.
Yes, I spent basically all day on Tuesday outside in the pub in the sunshine.
Isn't
at
it
the pub.
nice? Doesn't the weather? I mean, you being from Australia, I mean, you must really miss the weather that is like this presumably all year round for you.
Yes, that's one thing I do miss about Australia is the weather, but there's an advantage to, I think, growing up as a child in Australia is I've got harder skin than people here locally. So when I go and sit out all day in English sunshine at the pub, I just go very, very brown.
Right.
Whereas if I did the same
as opposed
thing in
to red
Australia,
like everybody else does.
Yeah. Whereas if I did the same in Australia, in the morning, in the afternoon, I'm all right. But even me, and I naturally tan, I can't sit out in the middle of the day. I just burn.
Right.
Even Australian Aborigines burn. And the number, we used to have a farm manager in North Queensland who was Aboriginal, and he would be with his big hat and under the tree in the middle of the day, and he'd go, "Look, stupid whitey on the tractor, not wearing a hat." That kind of thing.
Yes.
Because
well, this is the thing.
burn.
I mean, I used to always look forward to on a Monday morning in the old days before the pandemic when you'd get on the tube and there'd be an awful lot of people with red marks all over them because they'd been lying around in Hyde Park on a Sunday afternoon. But
toasting.
Yes, quite. But let's talk a little bit about Twitter, because it is one of our favourite subjects. We talk about it quite a lot. This morning we see the papers getting very carried away with the sexist and racist tweets sent out by a young cricketer by the name of Ollie Robinson, who's been somehow dug up about 9 years ago to have said some things which we're not going to repeat here, but which are vaguely offensive, but not, the worst thing I've ever read. But I wonder where these people come from that find this stuff. I mean, why do they bother?
Well, the expression used to describe them comes from an American writer who's actually a socialist. But he just really, really quite left wing, and it's been popularised in the UK by Toby Young, who is not a socialist.
Yes.
And Freddie de Boer is the American chap, and he calls it offence archaeology.
Yeah.
Which is where you go back through someone's Twitter feed or social media generally, because it has been done in the past, not just with Twitter. I've seen it done to people using Facebook. And that's particularly unpleasant because if it's not their official author account or sport, in the case of a cricketer like Ollie Robinson, he would probably have a fan page or something like that. If it's not an official page, it's just their personal page. And most people on Facebook use it to put up pictures of their cats and their kids and stuff like that.
Right.
And I have seen people even do offence archaeology on places like Facebook. It's just bonkers. And they go back decades. I mean, there is that joke, and I mean, it was originally popularised by Carl Benjamin, the chap who was the UKIP candidate, where he put it out there, sort of, join Twitter, start tweeting. 10 years later, surprise, you're fired.
But
that's what happens.
Also, I mean, lots of people say lots of things on Twitter that they probably shouldn't say. And at the end of the day, unless you're being, in my view, particularly offensive about an individual and therefore putting yourself at risk of libeling somebody, something that's this old shouldn't really matter, should it?
No, I really have. I have a problem with offence archaeology generally. I have a real problem with offence archaeology when it is done to minors. So we've seen situations where 13 and 14-year-old kids who said something stupid on social media in the United States have got to the age of, I don't know what year how old they are when they start university in America, because over here it's like 18 or 19, they might be a bit younger, but they're around about 18, and they've had their university places pulled from them on the basis of something that they said when they were 13 or 14, or perhaps even younger. One was 12. Now, this chap, this Ollie Robinson, is right on the margins because he's 18, so he isn't a minor anymore. But I think it's, in combination with the fact that it's 9 years ago, I mean, who knows any 18-year-old who doesn't have a brain the size of a peanut?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, 18-year-olds just have brains the size of a peanut. And it doesn't matter how clever you are or how middle class you are or anything like that. I mean, I might have been 18 and have 4 A's at A-level and all of this silly nonsense, but I assure you, at 18, I had a brain the size of a peanut.
And also,
I did
it's
not
not
know
even
how to behave.
And it's not necessarily so much about the brain size; it's about the judgment and the fact that you
Yes.
don't have any.
Well, yes. Why is it always young people who wrap their cars round trees? Why is it, you know, they're sort of riding the bicycle down the hill? Look, bum, no hands. Look, bum, no teeth. It's always the teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, only the other day I saw, and before people go, oh, it's boys are worse. That is true statistically that they're worse, but always remember that the dangerous sport that girls like is even more dangerous than the dangerous sport that boys like, because the dangerous sport that girls like is horse riding.
Yes.
So it's not like a BMX bike and it's not like a trail bike. It's an animal that is much bigger than you with a mind of its own. And part of learning to ride a horse is learning how to relate to an animal. And we all know lots of girls love horse riding.
Yeah.
And yes, it's very dangerous. I've fallen off a horse, and my show jumping coach at the time said, Helen, you get straight back on again or you will never ride a horse again.
And that's fine,
so,
as long as you didn't actually hurt yourself to such an extent that you couldn't get back on again, because that
No,
also
that's
happens
true.
to some people. But I just think, you know, there is this kind of tendency now to look for something to be offended by, whether it's, 10-year-old tweets, whether it's something that somebody said in a speech 2 years ago. You know, there seems to be an industry built up around all of this. And I'm just not sure
everybody
who's doing
is buying into it. Everyone is doing it. I have seen people going through Joe Biden's historical speeches now, and that guy is a piece of the furniture in American politics. He's probably said something to offend everybody.
Well, yes, exactly
and
right.
What is your point? You know, but so I really do have an issue with this. But my candid advice, because it's not going to go away, is there are apps you can get that just delete all your historic tweets. You know, so delete everything that's older than a year, basically. And I know some people who delete everything that's older than like a month. You know, they just delete all their historic tweets.
Yeah.
I mean, but the problem is the internet never forgets. And if you're a public figure, other people will find out that you've deleted your tweets.
Yes, but they have to go looking for it. I mean, presumably, maybe this guy, Ollie Robinson, has got a couple of enemies or an ex-girlfriend that didn't like him or something, you know, because somebody's dug him up. And I don't imagine why you would do it. Because why would you assume that he had written something like that and then go looking for it?
I'm assuming that the reason people thought that he might have been a bit mouthy or yappy on Twitter is because he did get in trouble at Yorkshire for being late to training all the time and this kind of thing. And he seems to be fine at Sussex, but he's had trouble at other clubs. So in the county championship for bad behaviour. And I suspect people thought, oh, there might be a story in here. But even that, you know, it's the classic case of, is this in the public interest or merely interesting to the public? And this is a question that you've no doubt had to answer many times in your life as a journalist. It's not, I know it's something that I've had to answer. I've had people come to me and say, can you write about this in the newspaper, usually the Australian? I've had this happen a couple of times in Oz. And I've just said, look, it may be interesting to the public, but I don't think it's in the public interest.
In this case, I don't think it's either. I don't think it's of much interest to the public, who are probably quite happy to be watching cricket again without having to withdraw people from the game because of something they said 9 years ago. And also, I don't think the fact that he said it is particularly remarkable anyway.
Well, no, it's sort of welcome to the world of 18-year-old people who have just finished school and, in his case, just starting out in a sporting career. And oh, goodness.
I know.
I mean, I'm trying to... The people who do this, I suppose, my final comment on this is they were never children. They were born old. I mean, my father used to use the expression, you know, the world's youngest old fogey.
Yes.
You know, you do wonder if they were ever children, if they can ever remember what it is like to be a child or a young person or an adolescent.
Yes. Well, I find myself asking that question all the time now as I deal with my 16-year-old and my 14-year-old, and I remember what I was like when I was 16.
Don't let them go on Twitter.
And you just go, well, yeah, well, certainly they're not on Twitter, and there's no reason that they will ever be on Twitter, so we shall see. I think they think it's for old fogies. I think they're on TikTok more than they are on